Hi there. Now that we've talked about important topics like prepping your soil and composting and adding that to your soil, I want to talk about one last important element to keep your plants healthy from the soil level, and that is fertilizer. Fertilizer is so important because it's going to apply all of the nutrients that your plant is going to need throughout the growing season. My name is Calvin Gardner, and I am the Urban Residential Horticulture Extension Agent for Orange County, Florida. I help people with their backyard gardens, and my goal is to help you grow a much healthier and stronger garden throughout this season. Let's get into it. So, the University of Florida suggests that throughout your gardening season, you use a 10-10-10 fertilizer. Well, what does that mean? And what does that have to do with any of your plants? Well, we're going to break this down for you so that it's much easier to understand what kind of fertilizer you are using. When you purchase fertilizer, you're going to see 3 different numbers on the bag. Now, some fertilizers will actually put that number on the front of the bag, but sometimes you need to go searching and look around the bag to find these 3 numbers. But what they stand for are the 3 vital nutrients that all plants need. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Like I said, the University of Florida suggests that you use a 10-10-10, which means there's 10% of the volume of the bag is nitrogen, 10% of the volume of the bag is potassium, and 10% is phosphorus. Now, you don't always have to use that, but it's a good middle of the lane fertilizer. This is a 757, and I like this because the middle number, the phosphorus, is lower, and that's because Florida soils have a high amount of phosphorus and often don't need this amount of fertilizer. So we can actually avoid using that in our fertilizers in order to limit some of the runoff and pollution we can make with our fertilizers. The university suggests that you should really be testing your soil if you're starting a new garden bed with new soil, or if you seem to be putting on fertilizer and it just doesn't seem to be doing anything for your plants. So it's a pretty simple process. All you do is grab yourself a little shovel. You can even use just a spoon and a little baggie, and you just go into your soil. You go about 3 to 6 inches in depth, grab that soil and put a little bit in the bag, and then move around your garden bed in a zigzag fashion and grab just little bits of soil like you did originally and put it into the bag. Once you have a full bag, you can go ahead and take it, mix it up so it kind of gets homogenized. And then there's a few options from here. You can either take it into your local county office, which often does pH testing. We do it here at Orange County. And then you can also send it off to the university and they can do a full test on all the nutrients that are in the soil plus the pH. And getting the pH will tell you how available these nutrients are to the plant's roots in the root zone, which is going to be key for them to uptake this fertilizer throughout the season. Now, there are at-home pH tests, and while not often as accurate, they are getting better with time, so you can certainly consider that as an option. When you go to apply fertilizer, I wish I could tell you the exact formula of how much you should add to the soil with X amount of fertilizer, but at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is add the fertilizer in the same way that the box tells you to do so. And the way that you typically do that is to grab a cupful or however much they suggest and do a broadcast over your soil. So that's just when you lightly try to sprinkle it across the entire bed of soil for however the prescribed amount for that amount of soil is. Go ahead, set that down. And you take your rake and you just rake it in to the first few inches of soil depth there so it starts to break down. UF suggests doing this about a week or 2 before planting. And then once you move throughout the season, you can do a few additional fertilizer additions if your plants are showing you that they need it, which would be something like yellowing leaves or stunted growth. Some plants are going to want different kinds of nutrients throughout their season. Now, it's not a catch-all, but we often suggest that plants like lettuce and leafy greens will often want more nitrogen. So when you're looking for a fertilizer for those, you can look for a bigger number for that first number there. That's your nitrogen number on your fertilizer. Now, things like tuber crops like your carrots or potatoes or anything like that, you can certainly go and add more potassium. So that's going to be the 3rd number on your fertilizer. Often when you get that catch-all fertilizer for your garden beds, it's going to have enough for both types of crops, but just in case you want to get a little extra growth out of your plants. One last note I want to make is when you go to put fertilizer on your plants that are already growing, don't broadcast the fertilizer over the tops of the plants. Make sure that you get down low near the root zone and sprinkle it at the base of the plant. Because when we land fertilizer on top of the leaves, it can make them burn much easier. Now let's recap what we've learned. First off, when you go to pick a fertilizer, it's easy just to use a basic garden fertilizer, and it will tell you the percentages of how much of each nutrient is on there with those 3 numbers that you find. Second, always get a soil test if you're curious about how your soil is doing and if your plants don't seem to be thriving. And finally, make sure that you're thinking about what kind of plants you're growing to fertilize them to a more tailored way of how they're going to grow. If you have any other questions about fertilizer, please feel free to reach out to your local county extension, where we would be happy to answer any questions about garden and fertilizer. Thank you.